What's up and welcome to another episode of Game Positive. Lots of stuff on the gaming horizon, tons of stuff going on over at Season Gaming, and the Brazilian Trades Commission's open policy on court documents is shedding a lot of light on the Activision Blizzard King acquisition, more specifically, Sony's thoughts on that deal. And finally, we discuss everything we know about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and whether or not it can save the fall season after countless games have been delayed out of 2022. But first, let's talk about what I've been playing. First and foremost, I have been absolutely destroying the new season of Apex Legends, Season 14 Hunted. I personally think this might be the best season they've ever released. The general consensus seems to be very positive. Pretty much everybody that I play Apex with has been loving it so far. The new Legend is really, really fun. Most importantly, though, they have added so much in terms of quality of life changes, like behind the scenes things that are only found in the patch notes. They don't really show up in the trailers or anything like that or the marketing materials, but the tons and tons of changes they've made behind the scenes, whether it's legend balancing, weapon balancing, moving different weapons around, or even just simply more basic quality of life things like changing the ring speed or changing the rank point system and how much it costs to enter a rank game and stuff like that. Everything just seems to have landed in the right place, at least initially in the early days of the expansion, and I'm just really, really loving it. On top of that, I've been playing a lot of multiverses. The game kind of just blew up. I knew it was kind of a cool concept, a hero brawler, like Smash style game based on Warner Media IP. More specifically, I was attracted to like the DC characters and stuff like that, even though there's also other cool characters like obviously the Looney Tunes. You have Rick and Morty and Adventure Time and all kinds of awesome stuff. I thought it would be kind of a fun romp, but it turned out to be a really, really compelling experience. I personally think that it plays a little bit better, honestly, than Smash, especially if you're looking at it from an online perspective with its netcode, its rollback netcode. It just works really, really well. It's very polished. The team that made it, I hadn't actually looked into it before playing, but post playing, I did look into it. It's made up of like insanely talented veteran leadership from like Naughty Dog and like other high quality studios. So there's a lot of talent that is behind the team that's making Multiverses, and it really shows in the final product. Of course, I'm still chipping away at Horizon Forbidden West. I'm closing in on 60 hours now, and I think I'm nearing the, I guess I would say, final third. There's still a lot of the map I need to clear out, and the story still has a lot of things that need to wrap up, at least I hope. So I'm still chipping away at that. Hopefully we'll finish that soon and get the platinum soon so I can clear up some space on my PlayStation hard drive. I've been maxed out for way too long. And finally, I've been playing the new expansion of Hearthstone, Murder at Castle Nathria. That's also been really, really fun. I actually plan on maybe doing a little bit of a guide or kind of a reference for Hearthstone. I feel like that is the best mobile game ever. And I think that it's one of the best, most content-packed card games. And I think that anyone who has played it early on when it was more or less just a PvP card game and hasn't played it or hasn't kept tabs on it recently may not know of some of the insane stuff that they've added to that game. There is so much content in there, and there's so many ways that you can play, specifically ways you can play the game that don't rely on you having accumulated this massive library of cards, which I know is usually the wall that prevents people from coming in, because if you're coming in late and all the other players have this huge library of cards, it's really hard to compete against that without spending a lot of money, which obviously is a big turnoff for many people. However, there's tons of ways you can play Hearthstone that circumvent that, which make it really, really fun in my opinion. So maybe keep an eye out for that. I'm still not 100% sure if I'm going to make that, but it is something that I think would be fun to write, and something that I think may benefit some people who may be on the fence about whether or not they should drop into Hearthstone for the first time or just drop in after a long, long absence. One thing I will say off the bat, though, if I don't make this, I want to make sure this message gets out. If you haven't played Hearthstone ever, or you haven't played in 120 days, I believe, you actually get a very competitive deck for free when you sign back in as kind of a welcome back bonus, which is really, really cool. So keep an eye on that. Taking a look now over at seasongaming.com, there's actually a ton of cool stuff to go over. Most recently, Nate has his review of Cult of Lamb that just went live today at the embargo, which is really, really cool to see us getting some support from the developers and the publishers and the PR companies giving us access to review codes so that we can get these reviews out on the embargo date. That really, really helps the website, and we're really stoked when that kind of stuff happens. You can head over to Season Gaming to read the full review from Nate, and I'll put the link to all these articles and reviews in the description or in the show notes if you're listening to this on a podcast. But a snippet from Cult of Lamb, he says, "I have played tons of roguelite games, and I have thousands of hours in the genre, so it's rare that a new title in the genre grabs me like Cult of the Lamb has. Cult of the Lamb is not as refined as the likes of Hades when it comes to story and voice acting, but the customization, compatibility, and the ability to pick your run and make it as long or as short as you like really fix some of the very minor issues I had with Hades. I have very few complaints about this game, one being that many of the mini-bosses and final bosses felt very similar with their attack patterns. It's minor overall, and in case you haven't been won over yet, there are already 2 separate and completely free DLC packages to be released after launch to build upon this already great experience. I truly believe that Cult of Lamb is a must-play game of 2022, and if you don't have to be a fan of roguelikes to enjoy it or to appreciate what makes it unique." And he gave that a 9 out of 10, which is a very, very, very good score. Next up on seasongaming.com, we got a little something from me there. I actually had the pleasure of reviewing the Victrix Gambit Pro controller from Victrix, which is a brand new kind of company in the video game peripheral industry. Again, you can check out the full written review on seasongaming.com, or you can check out the video review, which is on Season Gaming's YouTube channel if you want to get a more visual experience. On the controller, I said overall, the Gambit controller for Xbox is a phenomenal first effort from Victrix. It provides a ton of modularity and customization, which in turn gives you a lot of additional functionality beyond what a standard controller offers. They focus on what's important, like a carrying case, and stayed away from the frivolous things that can often hike up the price without adding any functional benefit, like RGB lighting. At just $99 US, the value proposition is very hard to ignore if you can live with the difficult to press 4-button backplate, or perhaps just use the 2-button configuration like I did. Then I highly recommend this very versatile controller from Victrix. One thing about seasongaming.com is we don't actually score hardware, we just recommend it or we don't recommend it, and I very much do recommend the Victrix Gambit Pro controller from Victrix. Also, from seasongaming.com, we have a review from Ains on As Dusk Falls, the kind of narrative adventure game that launched into Xbox Game Pass. On that review, he said, "My 2 playthroughs averaged just under 7 hours each, and I had no technical issues at all along the way. Quick resume was a very handy feature for As Dusk Falls, and it allowed me to jump in and out seamlessly. If you enjoy storytelling games and or interactive novel experiences, I highly recommend giving As Dusk Falls a look, as its new independent studio, Interior Night's work, has left me impressed, and I'll be paying close attention to whatever they decide to do next." And Ainsley gave As Dusk Falls an 8 out of 10, which is again a phenomenal score. All right, that's all I have from seasongaming.com this week. Now let's jump into some news. First up, we have some news regarding the upcoming August showcase for Gamescom, this Gamescom 2022. Xbox has confirmed its Gamescom 2022 lineup, and also it's been revealed that Sony is going to be joining the likes of Nintendo and Activision, as well as Take-Two, and they're actually skipping Gamescom. So before we jump into what's coming from Xbox, or what we expect to be there from Xbox, I think it's a little bit strange that Sony's not going to be there. My hope is that they're not going to be there because they have their own show planned to happen either right before or right after Gamescom. Because once again, if you don't remember, their E3 broadcast was pretty much just a third-party showcase. and there wasn't a ton of the juicy stuff that we really want to see there. And at the Summer Games Fest, they did make a presence and showed the Last of Us remaster trailer and gave us a concept art image of factions, but there's still obviously a ton of stuff happening at Sony, and we really want to see what's coming. I know last year they did also opt for a fall showcase, and that showcase was phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. I just hope it comes sooner rather than later. Turning over to Xbox, they have revealed that they are going to have some first-party showcases there. The likes of Pentiment is supposed to make an appearance. Age of Empires 4 is supposed to be there, perhaps a new expansion. Microsoft Flight Simulator is going to be there, as well as Sea of Thieves and Grounded, which is going to have its full release in September. They're also planning on having a booth for third-party titles, such as A Plague Tale Requiem, which launches into Xbox Game Pass this October. Disney Dreamlight Valley, which Game Pass members can have early access to in September. Dreamlight Valley is kind of the Disney-themed Stardew Valley-esque type experience. Gunfire Reborn is supposed to be there. The Last Case of Benjamin Fox, which is a fan favorite from their E3 showcase. That's supposed to be there as well. Lies of P, which is a weird title, but it actually looks a lot like Bloodborne, so it has a lot of people excited. Lightyear Frontier, which has a early access release window of spring 2023. They're supposed to be there. That is also a little bit like Stardew Valley, but in mechs. Planet of Lana, which was one of my favorite trailers from the Game Awards last year, is also supposed to be there, and a few other games will be there as well. Gamescom is always a fun experience. I've heard from people that have been there that it's the best show to go to live, as it's the biggest venue and it's the easiest to kind of mingle around and get your hands on a lot of stuff there. So I look forward to the stream for Gamescom. Jeff Keighley always does a really good job, in my opinion, and it should be a good show. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get a major showcase from PlayStation either before or after, sometime soon as well. Next up in the news, to add into what Xbox is showing at Gamescom, they are also going to be having the annual Quakecon celebration, which I believe happens the week before Gamescom. Some things of note is in the Quakecon stream schedule that they released the other day, they noted that Redfall is actually going to open the show with a 30-minute showcase. Now, we don't know exactly what that's going to entail. The title of the thing on the calendar says Bringing Redfall to Life with Arcane Austin. So I'm expecting it to be a panel or a deep dive. Maybe they'll showcase a little bit more, but I don't expect it to be like a 30-minute gameplay trailer or anything like that. However, the game is quite far along. I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't be able to see something along the lines of what Starfield showed. But again, like they're obviously working really hard to get that game out. So yeah, my expectations is it will be a panel that will probably give us some cool insight, maybe some developer diary type stuff, or some cool new screenshots or something like that. But who knows? QuakeCon has always been a pretty big deal for Bethesda. There's been some really awesome reveals that have happened at QuakeCon. The original kind of reboot for Doom was first shown at QuakeCon, which is pretty cool. Some other stuff on the docket for QuakeCon is some Fallout 76 experiences. There's a half-an-hour showcase for Fallout 76, which hopefully will show more of the Pit DLC, which we saw a little bit about earlier in the summer. They also have some kind of funny stuff as well, which I thought was quite neat, like the Dirty Keyboard Contest or the Elder Scrolls Online IRL LARP that they plan on doing. So it should be a fun day to tune in. It's going to be Thursday, August 18th. The streams start at 1 p.m. I believe that is Eastern time. So feel free to check that out. I will say that oftentimes, anytime Bethesda does a stream, they usually take advantage of Twitch drops. I'm not sure if there's going to be anything here, but it might be worthwhile to check it out just in case. So yeah, QuakeCon and Gamescom are all coming in the next couple weeks here, so hopefully we get a lot of stuff to kind of wet our whistles with. It's always fun to see more gaming news reveals coming, and with the way that things are going with the kind of implosion of E3, we are getting more and more reveals throughout the entire year instead of having one big showcase. So you always get to get you always get to get something. There's always something to tune into. So with these two shows coming the next 2 weeks, I'm excited to check those out. Next up, the Snitch has made his return to Twitter. For those that don't know, Twitter user at insider_WTF, aka the Snitch, has been one of the most prolific leakers recently. Everything that he has leaked, he or she, actually, we don't know their identity, but yes, they have been leaking a lot, and literally everything that they have said has come to fruition. They have a recent tweet a couple days ago that says, "Being afraid of the dark is what keeps most of us alive," which, for those who don't know, is a quote that is directly linked to the Alone in the Dark series. And coincidentally, THQ Nordic is the company that holds the rights to Alone in the Dark. And even more coincidentally is tomorrow, which would be August 12th at the time of recording, Friday, there is a THQ Nordic showcase. So all signs are pointing to a revival or some type of news relating to the Alone in the Dark series, which in my opinion is very, very exciting. I have a kind of a special relationship with this franchise. For those that don't know, or a lot of people, I should say, kind of point to Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil on PlayStation. I believe that came out in 1995 or 6. I should have double checked that before the show, but it's mid to late 90s is when that game came out, and a lot of people credit that with kind of birthing the survival horror genre, which is patently false, as Alone in the Dark was actually the first real 3D survival horror game, as it is actually in the Video Game Guinness World Records book, with that accolade tied to it. Now, in terms of my relationship with this franchise, Alone in the Dark for PS1, which I think actually came after Resident Evil, that game was the first game that I ever bought with my own money, brand new, which is a really, really cool experience. If you've been there, I'm sure all of us have been a kid once and saved up our allowance or paper route money or whatever it was and made that first video game purchase. For me, Alone in the Dark was that game. And no, it wasn't the best game ever. It definitely is not as good as Resident Evil, at least that particular Alone in the Dark game. But it holds a special place for me there, as well as the series has come back in my life in a different way, where when I first I had to actually, this is a little bit of a history lesson, I guess, for my life, but I had to move to a new province when high school first started. Like, so first day of high school, I lose all my friends and I move across the country and have to make brand new friends. And after that year of school, I actually sold my Xbox and all my games so that I could buy a plane ticket to go back onto my summer vacation and visit my old friends because I missed them and all that stuff. So when I came back, I never had an Xbox anymore. I couldn't really play games, which was obviously really dumb. After I got back from that trip, I immediately regretted my decision. But as it stands, I didn't have an Xbox for a while. I ended up saving up money, Christmas money, paper route money, different money that I got from scrounging and looking at pillows and stuff like that. And I did manage to get my hands on a new Xbox 360. And coincidentally, it came bundled with the Xbox 360 version of Alone in the Dark, which at the time when I got the console was the only game that I had. So that game has been a part of my life randomly, this really obscure kind of relatively unknown horror franchise. And that game, honestly, it did have some flaws. Specifically, when you got to the end of the game, you had to pretty much backtrack through the entire game to finish it, which was really annoying. But it did have some really cool, innovative stuff, like the inventory system was basically centered entirely around like looking into your various pockets and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. But yes, I'm excited for this game to make a return. And if the Snitch it sticks to his record, which has been flawless so far, I look forward to seeing what's coming from Alone in the Dark at the THQ Nordic event tomorrow. So tune in for that, and hopefully the Snitch streak continues. Next up, we have some news from Square Enix. The Diofield Chronicles demo has released on all major gaming marketplaces, surprisingly, even on the Xbox, which in the past, the Square Enix, especially the Japanese games coming from Square Enix, have skipped Xbox. So it's nice to see that they're sharing with everybody on this one. The game looks very, very, very similar to Fire Emblem, which for the longest time, that type of experience has kind of been exclusive to Nintendo platforms. I have downloaded the demo on my PS5 and I look forward to jumping into it. One thing that's really cool is the demo is quite lengthy. From what I hear, it's going to take a few hours to get through the content in the demo, which is really good to see. And on top of that, like they've done with a lot of their Nintendo Switch demos, all your progress in the demo will actually carry over to the full game. So you won't have to replay that several hours over again if you do intend to purchase the game when it comes out. It is due to come out, I believe, next month or early September, sometime in September, October. I should have double checked the date there, but the game does look really good. Obviously, when you're taking that Fire Emblem type gameplay, that is obviously really solid, but more importantly, you're able to run this game on next-gen hardware, so you're going to be able to up the fidelity significantly higher than what Nintendo Switch is limited to. I haven't got a chance to dive into it. I do have it again on my PS5 ready to go. Hopefully, I'll be able to get through that demo before the next week's episode and give you some more impressions there. But again, I would definitely recommend checking this out if you have any interest in tactics games or if you have any love for the Fire Emblem franchise. And by the time you get to the end of it, like I said, you'll be able to transfer that progress to the main game if you intend on doing that, or perhaps it's not enough to make you spend the money to buy it, and then maybe it ends up on Game Pass in the near future or PlayStation Premium, and your progress is still saved. So it's good. It's a nice chance to jump into a demo and get a taste of a really high-quality AAA tactics game, which is not something that you usually get to see. Next up, there is a quick story here, retro gaming story, which is really, really interesting in my opinion. If anyone remembers the epic boxing game on the SNES, Super Punch-Out, I'm sure everybody has taken a jab at that game once or twice and knows exactly what we're talking about here. There's been a new cheat discovered in Super Punch-Out, the original Super Punch-Out, which has been hidden actually for 28 years, which is pretty insane, given the age of the internet that we live in now, that had been managed to stay hidden for that long, especially when you consider how mega the cheat actually is, as this cheat allows you to take what was originally a one-player game and actually play a versus match against another player using the second controller. There's a series of codes that you have to enter in at the start menu with the second controller plugged in, and it will pop up a character select screen and let the player 2 choose any of the fighters that little Mac will fight against in the campaign of Super Punch-Out, and you get to play PvP with your friends on Super Nintendo Super Punch-Out. I just thought that was really cool. I wanted to mention that. I'll post the link in the show notes in the description in case you own a Super Nintendo with Super Punch-Out, so you could check that out. I actually may want to check out and see if it works on the Nintendo Switch Online version, because I know that that game is on there, and I do have two controllers, so maybe there's a way to kind of check it out there. I can't believe I never thought about that until I started talking about this article out loud, but I just thought that was really cool. One, for a cheat to come and go undiscovered for nearly 30 years, but two, for a cheat that would have added so much to the game back in the day. I played this game so much on Super Nintendo, and every time I played it with my friends, it was passing the controller back and forth. If we knew that we could have played PvP together, we would have done that all day. I can't believe that has been hidden for so long, and I look forward to checking that out. Hopefully someday I can track down a real Super Nintendo, a real copy, if the Switch Online version doesn't work. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting and really cool. Hopefully you did too. Finally, we have some big news coming out surrounding the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Earlier in the week, a week or so ago, Sony had come out and said their piece on the agreement. And now I believe that Sony has probably kind of repeated what they've said many times throughout this whole process, but it wasn't until it got to the Brazilian part of the negotiations, or with the Brazilian courts, Brazilian trade corporation. I don't know the technical term for the body of government in Brazil that kind of goes over these types of acquisitions, but I do know that part of their kind of policy is that they're very open with the sharing of documents in these types of things with the public. So because of that, we're able to kind of dig in deeper and see what these companies are actually saying to one another. So first up, we'll talk about what Sony says, and then we'll talk about Xbox's response. So first up, I want to mention right off the bat that this is kind of a excerpt from the documents that was transcribed by Video Games Chronicle. I'll post the link to all of these articles in the show notes and description so you can see the full thing, and I want to make sure to credit them because they're the ones that went through all the fine print and transcribed it so that it's a little bit easier to digest. So first up, Sony calls Call of Duty an essential game, a blockbuster, a AAA type game that has, quote, no rival, which is very interesting. They also say, according to a 2019 study, the importance of Call of Duty to entertainment in general is indescribable, the company said. The brand was the only video game IP to break into the top 10 of all entertainment brands among fans, joining powerhouses such as Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. Call of Duty is so popular that it influences users' choice of console, and its community of loyal users is entrenched enough that even if a competitor had the budget to develop a similar product, it would not be able to rival it. Sony went on to explain the huge resources Activision puts behind Call of Duty and their core reasons why it believes the FPS series is unlikely to be rivaled by any competitor. Sony is on record saying each annual Call of Duty release takes around 3 to 5 years to develop. As Activision releases one Call of Duty game per year, this equates to an annual investment of hundreds of millions of dollars. Approximately 1,200 people work on each version, and another 1,500 people are involved in the publishing and distribution. Thus, Call of Duty alone has more developers than most game companies employ across their entire development portfolio, including AAA studios. Also, given its plan to recruit 2,000 additional developers by 2021, Activision probably expects Call of Duty to become even more successful in the future. No other developer can devote that same level of resources and expertise in game development. Even if they could do that, Call of Duty is overly entrenched so that no rival, no matter how relevant they are, can catch up. Sony went on to note that Call of Duty has been the top-selling game for almost every year for the past decade, and for its genre, it's overwhelmingly the best-selling game. It is synonymous with first-person shooter games and essentially defines that category, they said. This is also demonstrated by player engagement on social media, as Call of Duty has over 24 million followers on Facebook versus 7 million for Battlefield, and over 12 million followers on Instagram versus 2 million for Battlefield. It added, to say the least, players would be unlikely to switch to an alternative game as they would lose that familiarity, those skills, and even the friends they made playing Call of Duty games. Even in weaker years like 2021, Call of Duty still managed to outperform most other games by a considerable margin. Call of Duty Vanguard, released in 2021, for example, was widely regarded as weaker than previous year's titles, but it's still one of the best-selling games of 2021. In other words, even in a bad year, players remain loyal to the brand and continue to buy the game. So that's what Sony had to say, basically alluding to the fact that Call of Duty is so big and so important and has such a huge player base that is entrenched in the brand that if that brand was to be owned by one of Sony's competitors, i.e. Microsoft, that it could persuade people to leave PlayStation and go into the Microsoft ecosystem. More specifically, they're worried about the game being available on Game Pass because that would make them, like, honestly, if you're a Call of Duty player and that's like your main game that you play, would you rather just pay $15 a month and have access to all of them forever? Or would you rather pay $90 a year plus however much you're going to spend for the season pass, plus whatever you're going to spend on microtransactions, and buy that game outright digitally? A lot of people may be persuaded by the lower initial cost of Game Pass, and that's what Sony's really worried about. And Microsoft responded to that as well via the Brazilian court documents, and this is also transcribed by Video Games Chronicle, so I'll post a link to that as well. In the report transcribed by Video Games Chronicle, Microsoft notes that while numerous third parties, including Ubisoft and Bandai Namco, gave responses, Sony was the only company that claimed that Call of Duty was in a genre of its own with no competition. Microsoft states only one third party, Sony, presented materially different opinions than the applicants, and the other third parties consulted by Microsoft. Sony is isolated in this understanding and curiously even contradicts itself in its response to the letter, as we will be detailing below. Microsoft goes on to state that Sony doesn't want to see Call of Duty games on Game Pass on day one because it is resentful of having to compete with Microsoft's subscription service, which is a pretty bold statement. They go on to say Sony's public statements on subscription games and its response to the letter are clear. Sony does not want attractive subscription services to threaten its dominance in the digital distribution market for console games. In other words, Sony rails against the introduction of new monetization models capable of challenging its business model. Microsoft also denies Sony's claim that Call of Duty is in a category of games in itself, despite the fact that it has a loyal following. Stating that Call of Duty has a loyal following is a premise from which does not follow from the conclusion that the game is a gaming category per se, Microsoft claims. It's a little bit of legal jargon, but they go on to say Sony's own PlayStation, incidentally, has an established base of loyal brand players. Such a finding, however, does not lead to the conclusion that the PlayStation or any brand product with loyal customers is a separate market from all other consoles. Extrapolating from such a finding to the extreme conclusion that Call of Duty is a category of games per se is simply unjustifiable under any quantitative or qualitative analysis. Now that is a mouthful for sure, but essentially what they're saying is that if Sony claims that Call of Duty is so big that it isn't an FPS game anymore, it's in a genre all on its own, Microsoft is also arguing that Sony PlayStation as a brand is so big that players are loyal to that brand specifically, but they're not claiming that PlayStation is a brand of its own. They still view PlayStation as in competition with Nintendo and Microsoft, etc. So that's what they're talking about in terms of the contradiction, which I think is funny. I don't think that Call of Duty is in a brand, like in a genre of its own, or if it's something else on its own. Sony is essentially trying to kind of point that out as part of the acquisition. Perhaps they're lobbying to try and get that excluded from the acquisition for some reason. I'm not sure. Microsoft has been very open about their intent to keep Call of Duty on all platforms, but obviously they also are open with their intention of making it a day one Game Pass launch title. So that's what Sony really doesn't want to have happen, because Sony has been very public again that with their stance on the streaming stuff, that yes, they do want to offer streaming games to their customers, which they do already with PlayStation Extra, PlayStation Premium, and that's a really good service in and of itself, but they don't want to kind of lose the ability to release these huge AAA games for full MSRP when they come out and then put them on the service later. They don't want those day one drops, and they worry that if Call of Duty was a day one drop on Game Pass, that it would persuade people to leave PlayStation and go sign up for Game Pass and get an Xbox or something like that. I think Sony has a point, but I think Microsoft has a point too. Ultimately, this is really just all of these statements are in the best interest of the parties that made them. None of it is really surprising to me. I don't expect this to really make a difference. I think this acquisition is going to go through. I don't think that Microsoft owning ABK necessarily is a monopolization of video games or anything like that, which is the kind of the point of this proceeding. But I did think it was interesting to see what these companies are really saying behind the scenes, specifically Microsoft, because of how aggressive they were with their word choices. You usually don't see Microsoft be that kind of aggressive with the things that they say, which was really funny to read, honestly. So this war still wages on. It's going to be a while yet before this acquisition goes through. And I look forward to when it does, because A, we're going to get a ton of games on Game Pass, but B, we can stop talking about it and start talking more about actual video games. So why don't we do that right now and jump into today's topic, which is about the wasteland that the fall 2022 season has become due to several delays and one potential savior, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Let's do this.
2022 had been looked at as one of the potential best years in gaming history. There was so many amazing games due to make their debut in 2022, and we got off to a great start with Destiny, The Witch Queen, with Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West, even Gran Turismo, despite some of its stumbles out of the gate, launched very well. You had even indie games like Sifu made a big impact, and there was so many more games to look forward to, but unfortunately, we have been struck by delay after delay after delay. And as we approach the end of the year, going into the prime fall holiday season, approaching the Game Awards, a lot of stuff has fallen through the cracks. Big delays that we've already known about, like Starfield and Redfall and Forspoken, are big heavy hitters that were due this year, but even more games have recently been delayed, like Arc Raiders, Marvel's Midnight Suns, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, Sea of Stars, Lord of the Rings Gollum, Warhammer 40k Darktide. The list goes on and on and on, and now we are left with a mostly empty fall. There's still a ton of games, don't get me wrong, including some really big AAA games that are coming right at the very end of the year in December with Hogwarts Legacy and the Callisto Protocol. But really, when we get down to the fall season, it's God of War and Call of Duty. And if you don't have a PlayStation, it's Call of Duty. So today we want to talk about everything that we know about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 as we approach its October launch, and we want to find out whether or not it may have the chops to carry this whole season by itself. So let's jump right in. First of all, Modern Warfare 2's marketing is describing the game as a new era for Call of Duty. The game is being designed with state-of-the-art connected gameplay built with one unified engine. This redesigned engine will be shared with Treyarch, Sledgehammer Games, and the other co-studios for future Call of Duty titles, as well as, of course, Infinity Ward, which is making Modern Warfare 2. Before we continue, though, I think it's really important to kind of hammer this home. A lot of people know about the kind of three-pronged attack that Activision has with Call of Duty. The reason why they can release a game every year is because they have a release from Treyarch, then a release from Sledgehammer, followed up by a release from Infinity Ward, and they have these three studios that have 3-year development cycles. That's at least kind of the common knowledge that we all have with Call of Duty, but it's not actually that simple, because it's not only those three teams that work on Call of Duty. They also have Raven Software, who almost like they were the leads on Warzone, which is kind of their biggest IP right now in Call of Dutyville. But they also have Beanox Games, High Moon Studios, Toys for Bob, Activision Shanghai, and many more studios that are actively working on Call of Duty. There's more studios working on Call of Duty than most publishers have total in terms of their entire fleet. There is a lot of effort that goes into these games across hundreds and thousands of people. It's not limited to just these three studios. So to have this unified engine that's going to make all of their work easier is really big news. As if any of you are currently playing modern Call of Duty games, you'll notice that the file sizes of these games are quite extreme. I installed Cold War the other day, and it's over 240 gigs on the Xbox Series X. The install size for Modern Warfare with its Warzone component comes in at just under 200 gigabytes, which is also pretty extreme. This unified engine will kind of streamline the development process and hopefully make the connective tissue between all of these teams easier to manage, as that's one of the things that kind of had led to these insane file sizes, among, of course, other things. But hopefully we notice a smaller install size, and hopefully this makes the development process better and easier for all of these teams to cohesively work together. In terms of the story of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, we're going to turn to a GameSpot article that detailed it. The story is going to focus on Task Force 141, as much of Call of Duty Modern Warfare's 2019 story revolved around Captain Price building up his iconic task force from the original series on the Xbox 360 and PS3. So Modern Warfare 2 is going to follow 3 years after the events of the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare, with Captain Price's Task Force 141 now fully formed and operating around the world. Price is joined by the iconic characters of Simon Ghost Riley, Kyle Gaz Garrick, and John Soap McTavish with this newly assembled Task Force 141. And it will also include a new character known as Alejandro Vargas. If you played the original Modern Warfare, you know that the ending of that campaign ended on a cliffhanger of this team coming together. So having this game take place shortly after that, with the team kind of having already been able to go on a few missions together and stuff like that and build that camaraderie, is really cool. As somebody who's played all of the Modern or Call of Duty campaigns for the most part, I think there's a couple I missed, honestly, but Soap and Ghost and Gaz and Price and those guys, they're like the only characters that really kind of stood out to me, and they're really the only ones that I recognize. So I want to see them again. The original campaign for the reboot of Modern Warfare back in 2019 was fantastic, so I'm really looking forward to this. The newly formed Task Force 141 can also be seen in action during the reveal trailer that they had, which shows a montage of the different campaign set pieces, which was paired obviously very well with a kind of remixed version of Metallica's Wherever I May Roam. They like to use licensed music in their trailer, and it usually always pays off for them. In addition to the trailer, though, there was a gameplay video that was released shortly after, which goes over the Dark Water mission from the campaign, which also looks really cool. It's their Task Force 141 is trying to intercept controls for enemy missile launch, and it takes place on a boat with really nice water effects and like sliding containers on the boat as it goes in the wave. It looks really, really cool. It's also important to note here that the team at Infinity Ward has revealed that they intend to shift the tone of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign slightly more towards a blockbuster action film and showcase less of the actual horrors of real military conflicts. A lot of this is likely coming after Modern Warfare 2019 received some backlash for its Clean House mission, where you had to infiltrate kind of a residential house that was filled with like terrorists and bad guys, but also women and children. That's a scenario that unfortunately is very real in terms of some military operations that have actually happened. The mission itself was incredibly tense, and in my personal opinion was one of the most memorable experiences of the game. That is one of the coolest. I struggle to say the word cool, because it's not a cool what's actually happening in the mission, but it was one of the most crazy experiences I've had playing any Call of Duty campaign mission, and I personally would put it up there with All Gillied Up from the original game in terms of the most impactful missions that are in any of the Call of Duty campaigns. But it's also a very harrowing experience, and I can easily tell that this would make a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. And when you're making a game that's intended to be played by as many people as possible, you really don't want to release missions that will kind of make them feel uncomfortable and make them not want to play. There was that mission, I believe, was part of the preview process, and I remember a game journalist who got early access to it feeling uneasy about it in general. And of course, when it launched, it got a fair amount of backlash. How far that balance shift will be, like how far they'll lean away from those realistic kind of tense military experiences into more Hollywood blockbuster, that remains to be seen, but hopefully they can find a way to strike a balance between tension and fun. It's a balance that they normally are able to achieve in most Call of Duty games, so I don't expect many issues there. Moving on to multiplayer. The multiplayer is going to introduce some new mechanics, and ground war will return. Some of Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer modes were also revealed to GameSpot and other outlets during an early preview of the game, including staple modes such as Team Deathmatch and Domination, as well as the popular large-scale ground war mode from 2019 Modern Warfare is confirmed to be returning. Plus, there will be 2 new round-based objective modes called Hostage and Knockout. Hostage, from my research, is very similar to the old Hostage mode from the original Counter-Strike games, where you're trying to either secure or rescue a set of hostages from the other team. And the knockout mode is actually going to be a kind of Call of Duty take on the Halo oddball mode, where a team has to, or several different teams have to take control over a bag of cash, and whatever team is left standing with the money is the winner of the round. While 2019's Modern Warfare went rather large with many of the core multiplayer maps, specifically with putting an emphasis on that ground war mode, Infinity Ward had said it has scaled back all of the standard maps in Modern Warfare 2 to cater specifically to those 6v6 arena matches that people know and love from all the other Call of Duties. Additionally, though, the ground war maps will no longer be kind of pieces of traditional multiplayer maps that are expanded. The developer has said that they are going to be building maps specifically for ground war from day one that are centered around that large scale experience. The game will also feature new mechanics such as the new mantling system, having a greater emphasis on swimming and just water in general being a bigger factor in the different missions as well as the multiplayer. And of course, there is a new slew of perks and equipment that have been data mined. You can take that with a grain of salt, but there is a lot of new stuff there and returning favorites as well that should separate the multiplayer experience. Call of Duty has always had a very large kind of offering with its PvP, just its base PvP. There's always tons of maps, tons of modes. A lot of the maps had been previously locked behind season passes and stuff like that. They haven't gone into the monetization yet here, but I suspect that the maps will kind of be free and it will be monetized through cosmetics. That's kind of been the trend as of late. So it's good to see that there. And it's nice to see them taking some chances with new modes. When you have games like, I always, I feel like I always have to take a jab at Halo Infinite in every episode. It's not intentional, but it's one of my favorite series of all time, and I like to compare it to other things. But when you have something like Halo Infinite that is missing crucial modes at launch and is not really launching with anything super unique in terms of modes, to have Call of Duty coming with all the modes you expect, plus new interesting ones like Knockout and Hostage, and the return of something like Ground War is really, really cool. Moving on from the standard PvP, though, they also have confirmed that Spec Ops will be returning, which is the Modern Warfare take on the zombies mode. It's kind of the same thing as zombies, except there's no zombies. It's PvE, but they didn't confirm the rumored DMZ mode yet. Diving into what this article has to say here, Infinity Ward confirmed Modern Warfare 2's third mode after campaign and PvP will be Spec Ops, the popular co-op mode originally from 2009's Modern Warfare 2, which served as the series' sort of two-player missions of varying objectives with increasing difficulty. Spec Ops returned 10 years later with the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare, but the mode was ambitiously updated to feature 4-player squads on larger maps. Infinity Ward game director Jack O'Hara said Modern Warfare 2's version would be more comparable to an enhanced version of the 2009 Spec Ops from Modern Warfare 2. So that makes me feel like it's going to be a lot more intimate, perhaps only 2 players, and not take place on these huge maps. The Spec Ops mode in Modern Warfare 2019 usually took place on big chunks of the Warzone map, or big maps in general, and it had objectives that were really far apart. A lot of times you're getting into vehicles and stuff like that, versus the original implementation of Spec Ops was a lot more close quarters. There's a lot of holding down hallways and just like it added a little bit more tension to it. So be interesting to see how it turns out. And with the announcement of Spec Ops, you would think that would squash the rumors of the kind of Escape from Tarkov inspired mode called DMZ, but leakers are still suggesting that the mode exists. A notable leaker of Call of Duty on Twitter, Ralph's Valve, suggests that DMZ mode could arrive in 2023, early 2023, as a free-to-play addition to Modern Warfare 2, similar to the late launch of Warzone for Modern Warfare 2019. DMZ is said to be an open world mode with a mix of battle royale and survival game elements, and the mode has reportedly, according to leakers, been in development for 4 years, which would mean it started development approximately a year after Tarkov launched and gained its huge following, which would make it follow a very similar timeline to Warzone's release after the success of PUBG and Fortnite. Also included in Modern Warfare 2, there is rumored to be a map editor. In early June, the same Twitter user, Ralph's Valve, has claimed that Infinity Ward has plans for a community-led effort to create maps for Modern Warfare 2. The leaker suggests this map editor mode would be incorporated as an offline mode, equipping players with necessary tools for blocking out, mapping, and editing already existing maps. Of course, the map editor has not been confirmed by Activision, so rumors must be taken with a grain of salt. Now, this reminds me a lot more of the original kind of implementation of Forge back in Halo 3. You weren't given like a blank canvas and were able to build anything you wanted. You were given already existing maps, and you were able to either take away from them or add to them to create your own versions of maps. And the community, just with the very rudimentary tools that they had in Halo 3, was able to create some very compelling stuff. And usually what I would suspect, assuming this is true and the map editor exists, I would suspect them to create a multiplayer map that is more susceptible to this type of map editor or quote Forge experience. The Foundry map in Halo 3 was basically a giant square, so when you removed everything from it, it was a paradise for people that used Forge, and that's typically where a lot of the best Forge creations came from. So perhaps there'll be a very basic kind of even layout multiplayer map that could be easily manipulated with this map editor, and hopefully we see some really cool stuff. The COD community obviously is very, very large. It's much larger than the Halo community, especially the Halo community back in Halo 3. So if that community could come up with so many cool things like Griffball, among other things, then who knows what the Call of Duty community would be able to come up with a map editor like this. Also, they revealed that the Ricochet anti-cheat service is going to be arriving at launch, and there's a couple little details on Warzone 2. So Activision also confirmed that they can expect Call of Duty's Ricochet anti-cheat to arrive on day one for both Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2. Activision has recently announced that it has seen a very significant drop in cheaters since the implementation of Ricochet back in 2021. I personally am a fan of these anti-cheat things. I know that there is some questions around them about how much access they have to your computer at kind of a metal level. I don't think that Ricochet is as aggressive as the one that Riot uses for Valorant in terms of its access to your the innards of your computer, for lack of a better term. And there also are some complaints that sometimes these anti-cheats softwares can kind of be very bloated and slow down your rig or impact performance in some way. Personally, with Warzone, at least on console, I haven't noticed any real issues with Ricochet, other than I'm seeing significantly less cheaters, which is obviously a good thing. So how this will impact the game remains to be seen, but personally, I'm a fan of any time a developer is taking a large action against cheaters, because they are rampant, unfortunately, and especially if you play games on PC, if you play like especially indie games where they don't necessarily have the resources to get these like expensive anti-cheat platforms, you see a lot of cheaters out there, and it's unfortunate. So hopefully this does as it's what it's intended to do and provides a fair environment for people to play Call of Duty in this fall. Also, moving on to Warzone 2, the sequel is confirmed to launch in 2022 by Activision with no real date yet, so it could still come after the October 28th date for the launch of Modern Warfare 2, but they are sticking to their guns and claiming that it is coming this year. The Battle Royale is also confirmed to include the same vehicles, the new swimming mechanics, and emphasis on water, the new mantling mechanics, and all of the other mechanics that are announced for Modern Warfare 2, but it's still uncertain whether this next iteration will be a kind of 100% clean state or include weapons and perks and equipment and stuff like that from the previous game. They also are not confirming that it's actually called Warzone 2. So there's definitely a lot to be revealed still with this mode. Warzone is clearly the most popular way to play Call of Duty, if Twitch has any indication. It's one of the most popular games of all time. It's one of the most played games right now. And it was a huge success for Activision. In fact, the release of the last mainline Call of Duty game, Call of Duty Vanguard, that kind of, I think its kind of negative response, part of that is because everybody's gravitated towards Warzone, and that's what most people are playing. But I mean, obviously there was other issues with Vanguard, etc. But I do think that the popularity of Warzone did play a part in its reception. Yeah, so that's a lot of info, and Modern Warfare 2 is shaping up to be a massive endeavor for Activision, launching with a full campaign featuring the series' best characters, a fully fleshed out arena PvP suite with ground war for bigger team battles, a PvE option with its Spec Ops mode, a potential map editor, as well as the successor to one of the most popular games in the world right now with Warzone 2. All that with the rumored DMZ mode looming in the distance. This game, in my opinion, actually does stand a serious chance of being able to carry the fall season on its own. It's the most excited I have been for a Call of Duty game since, well, coincidentally, the original Modern Warfare 2. So excited, in fact, that I will be doing a ton of coverage leading up to and post-launch. So look forward to a discussion revolving the showcase, the reveal showcase that's coming in September, full beta impressions, which is coming shortly after that showcase, as well as a full review of the game when it launches on October 28th. So what do you guys think about Modern Warfare 2? Are you excited to check it out? If you have been out of the COD loop for a while, is it something that could possibly lure you back in? Let me know in the comments below or reach out to me on social media. Anyway, that will do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm actually heading out on vacation in a week or so, so I do plan on releasing at least one more episode before then, so stay tuned for that. Until then, though, remember to have fun out there, and I'll talk to you soon.